My definition of success is being able to take care of my family. So I've got a wife and three daughters, 22, 20, and 13 now. And just being able to take care of them, being able to provide for them and also teach them and help guide them in life.
Welcome to the Healthy Investor Podcast with Bob Mastroianni, where you and I will learn from successful real estate investors, entrepreneurs, and other highly driven individuals about their journey and the healthy habits and routines that play an integral part of their growth. All right. Welcome back to the Healthy Investor Podcast. I'm your host, Bob Mastroianni. Today I have with me Pete Reese. Pete is the president of Real Vest Properties, a land development and investing company with nearly 2 decades of real estate experience as a broker and investor. Pete has successfully purchased and sold hundreds of pieces of real estate for profit over the years for himself and on behalf of his clients. He did $3.5 million in revenue in 2022 with his land flipping and development business. And we're really going to dive deep into some of Pete's land flipping and development business. Pete's always looking for his next deal, including his longtime dream of owning a private island. So that's something else I definitely want to get into. Pete, thanks so much for being here today.
Well, thanks for having me, Bob. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, I want to get to that private island, but I think it's probably better if we start with a little bit of an introduction and tell us a little bit about, you're in California, correct?
Yeah, I'm in San Diego, California, a place called Del Mar. If you've ever been here, it's right on the coast, beautiful area, and weather's pretty nice year round, so I can't complain too much.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about, your land flipping and development business. That's a little bit, as I mentioned to you, that's a little bit unique to the type of guests that I've interviewed so far in the Healthy Investor Podcast. So I'd like to learn a little bit about it and sort of share that value with our listeners.
Yeah, so I'll go into kind of like what we do and the business model, and you can fire away with any questions that you have. What we do is a lot different than what a lot of other investors might assume is happening with land investing. Pretty much what we do is we buy properties directly from owners off market, and we use direct mail to generate our leads. So we send out actual offer letters to these people in the mail, and then they respond. We work out a deal, and we close on the property. We buy them cash, so we through an escrow, attorney, title office, whatever is happening in that state. We're buying these properties all over the country. So, I'm in California, and most of the time I never see any of these properties that we buy. So we buy them, and sometimes we'll do some minor value add stuff to the properties, like could be some clearing some paths. It could be getting a survey done. It could be even a minor subdivision if it's in an area where that can be done really quickly. And then we'll put them on the market and then resell them. So, and then we'll list them with a local land broker and try to sell them as quickly as possible. So our average hold times are only about 60 days on these properties. So, and that includes kind of the resale contract time period. So we try to price them pretty aggressively so they'll sell quickly. And we're also only trying to buy pretty quality pieces of property as well. So that means we've got to buy at a pretty steep discount. But the value that we can bring to the property owner is that we're able to close fast, and we're able to close with cash. And, land is typically one of those things that may take some time to sell depending on the area. So, we can get them a quick sale if they need it for whatever reason, or just want to move on for the property. So that's kind of the value that we bring.
So are there specific zoned lands, specifically zoned land that you're looking for? Are there specific types of land? What type of locations are you looking at? So what are the sort of highest and best use lands that you're looking for?
Most of these properties that we buy are 5 to 10 acres plus, and they would be considered in rural areas, generally outside of a suburban city type area, maybe an hour or two. It just depends. But, the more rural areas, kind of the better for us. And these properties are either used for recreation or they're used for a potential home site for the end buyer. And sometimes we don't know what their intent is when they're buying the property, but we do try to make sure that most of the properties that we're buying are have the potential to build on. So that gives the option for the end buyer to, and it makes it more saleable for us and more marketable.
And are you buying any land that is potential commercial development?
And we have done some of those, but we've kind of stumbled into them. They weren't anything targeted, but we've got some responses from property owners that had these, commercial type properties to sell, and we were able to buy them at a really good price. And then we, listed them and sold them as well. There's a couple pieces that we purchased that were kind of subdivision. Highest and best use is kind of a residential subdivision. So in those cases, we had a little bit of engineering work just done on paper, just to kind of figure out what it could be. And then we marketed them with a commercial broker to resell them that way to, ultimately make a higher profit.
Okay. Okay. Very interesting. I have not been in land purchase, land development, land buy and hold. That has not been, that just hasn't been my approach to real estate investing as of yet. And I think part of the reason for that is, when I first started my journey investing in real estate, I thought I needed to have a real estate license, or at least the education of a realtor, in order to move forward in this business. Years later, I've learned that that really wasn't necessary. And I also learned that I probably didn't love being a realtor. But during that time frame, I remember conversations with the instructor in my class. And when he spoke about land purchase, and he even spoke a little bit about land flipping, his approach was to try and buy land that was near where a big box store was buying, and to own land near it and then try and sell it to another big box store. So for example, if CVS buys on one corner, you want to own on the next corner, and maybe try and sell to Rite Aid or something like that. So in those conversations, it seemed like a very long hold period. So hearing you talk about 60-day turnaround is very interesting to me. Are there certain characteristics or certain features that you look for in order to ensure that you're going to be able to hold them for a shorter amount of time?
Yeah, the main thing is the purchase price. Well, first of all, we're trying to buy quality properties, and by that I mean generally properties that have road frontage or very easy access. Deeded access always, but it can't be down a 3-mile, narrow dirt path. It's got to have pretty good access. We don't like buying stuff on the side of a mountain or all swampland. Things like that are, more undesirable properties in most cases. So we try to buy properties that where, if you were to walk on the property, you would say, hey, this is a nice property. And sometimes that's different from area to area. But generally, if you can buy a nice property that has where you're buying it at a discount, and you're able to then put it on the market less than the competition, slightly below retail market value, you're generally going to find a buyer pretty quickly.
Okay.
So, and it just comes down to price. You can always kind of force a sale quicker. It's just a matter of reducing it to the point where it sells.
So would you steer clear of any land that has any sort of development on it? For example, from time to time we see in real estate a property's listed, it may have a building on it, and whoever's listing it may say, okay, this is really a land sale, right? Because the building has to come down. In a situation like that, would you sort of steer clear, or what would your approach be for something like that?
Yeah, we've bought properties like that. We've bought properties with houses on them already, or structures of some sort, and that are pretty much tear down type properties. And in those cases, we'll evaluate it kind of like any other piece of land, and they've actually done pretty well for us. It's just a matter of the price, pretty much. So I'm not opposed to any of those type of properties, and generally we're not going to go and get a demolition permit and clear the old house off or anything like that. We're just going to take it, and then we'll resell it to the next person who will then decide what they want to do with it. Some people may are maybe looking for those really, really heavy fixers or something like that, and maybe that's right up their alley. I don't know, but they tend to sell quicker actually if they have a structure on it, even if it's a terrible structure.
Well, that's interesting. I was going to ask, would you then tear it down? But I guess that sort of slows your process down. And now you're talking about permitting, you're talking about environmental type concerns, right? And that sort of
it's all
goes
about
out
speed.
Yeah. um, but I guess the other side of that is that sometimes buyers need help envisioning what can happen on a piece of land. And maybe there is some truth to the idea of, even if the property is a tear down, just seeing a home on there may help them envision the fact that a home actually belongs there, right?
I think so. I really do. I mean, it's interesting thing, that maybe it's all psychological or something, but maybe if they see that old home on there, they could start envisioning, oh, okay, well, at one point this was really a cool place, and we can make this our cool place. And those demo costs in most areas aren't too bad. So, they're we're putting these properties on the market at a pretty good price. So they're generally feeling like they're getting a pretty good deal. Maybe they feel like they're getting a better deal because it's got this existing structure. So
Hmm.
yeah, I guess buyers a little different, but we've tended to do pretty well with those existing structure type properties.
Okay. All right. Well, that's great info. Any specific advice? So somebody's new to investing, or they want to learn about purchasing land, flipping land. Any advice with your years of experience to just how to get started?
Yeah. Well, you can actually get going pretty quickly in this business. I didn't start flipping land until like the first property we flipped was in March of 2021.
Okay.
And yeah, we're about almost 2 years after that. But that first year we ended up doing 1.2 million and some change in revenue and about 50% gross profit margin. And then 2022 we did about 3.5 and then just under 50% gross profit margin. So, and then 2023 I think we're going to do 10 million. So on average, we try to buy these properties and then we try to double the price.
Mm.
So, like we buy it for 20,000, we try to net 40,000 after commissions, closing costs, all that stuff. But the main thing is that, and as you were talking about with your instructor, there's other ways to do this business. There's other people, there's other kind of niches that land investors get involved with. This is just kind of the way that I do things, and it's the system that's kind of evolved from what I learned initially, and we tweaked it kind of to suit what we do. But the the thing is that I notice land investors kind of getting into these little niches, like maybe they're buying next to in the path of progress, or maybe they're buying properties and putting a mobile home on them and then reselling them. Or maybe they're buying, properties that they know that they can just only properties they know they could split up into 5 pieces and then sell off those ones individually. But it comes down to learning one of the business models that's proven and that works, and then just repeating that process over and over again. And obviously, as you get into it, you could kind of tweak things and kind of go towards your strengths, but reinventing the wheel, like someone's already thought about it at this
Yeah.
point with land investing.
So what direction is sort of the preferred method if you're looking to buy and flip land? What's the preferred method for financing? Is that something where you're looking at hard money lending? I mean, I would guess that banking may have some different requirements. So what do you look at for financing?
Yeah, it's really difficult. Well, there really aren't any hard money lenders for land flippers. I always thought that there should be, but there really aren't any good options. But in this business, you can get money partners. They're pretty available, meaning you bring the deal as the land investor. They bring all the money to close the deal, to escrow or title, and then you split the profits down the middle when it sells. So we did that. Most of the deals we actually do with our own cash, but we did that on a couple of large deals. One of them in particular, we bought this property for, it was a 650-acre property, so it was a kind of larger purchase price. It was 315,000. So in that case, I found a partner that was interested in the deal as well. He brought the 315,000, wired it to the attorney to close the deal, and then we put it on the market to resell it. And at the end of the day, I think it sold for 595,000. We had a little bit of expenses involved in clearing some of the brush and things like that, but I think after all was said and done, after commissions, closing costs, we each got a check for 108,000. So one deal, he did very well, great return on his money in a short amount of time. And my return was kind of infinite in a way. I mean, I had to pay for the marketing to get the deal, but I didn't have to actually spend any money to acquire the property. So
Yeah.
pretty interesting how it works.
With a return like that, I bet I know who the first person in line for your next opportunity was.
Yeah, I know. And that's the thing. It's kind of a win-win, from both sides. From the investor side, they can get going really without a huge budget. They're just paying for marketing and kind of the overhead of the business. And then the other side, the money partner, they get to they get to share in on these deals without having to do all that other stuff, you know,
Mhm.
and get some really good returns. So it's kind of an interesting balance.
Very cool. Very cool. It's definitely something, as I mentioned, that I have not done a ton of research on. So this is a bit of
Yeah,
education for me, and I appreciate that.
before I got into it, I really knew nothing about it. I just saw some anecdotes of people online talking about, "Hey, I bought this property for 10,000 and I sold it for 30,000." These were comments in Facebook groups or something, and I was, thinking to myself, "Well, that's pretty cool. I'd love to be able to do that. Buy these properties and triple my money on them in a short amount of time." I just started digging in after that, and I bought a training program that was out there, and I just kind of took what they taught me and tweaked it some, and then just kind of went all in and you know, figured it all out as I went. But um, yeah, so it's a very unique business model. I mean, it's not a lot different from like house flipping. I mean, it's an active business, meaning it's short term holds. None of these are long term capital gains or anything like that. So it's all kind of active stuff. You're buying and selling. You're buying and selling continuously. The benefit over house flipping is, first of all, the house flipping market in a lot of areas is just completely, a red ocean, as they say. There's so many people involved in it, and there's so many people fighting for these deals that the margins are getting lower and lower. The other drawback with that is you actually got to manage that whole renovation process on these properties. I mean, like, you're managing contractors or doing some of the work yourself, and then you've got that hold time to get those renovations done. And a lot of unknowns can come up during that process, some extra expenses and things that you maybe didn't plan for unless you're super experienced and can figure all that out ahead of time. With land, it's really not that way. Like, we do some minor value add stuff a lot of times, but it's like brush clearing, or it's a survey or something. Like, it's not crazy stuff, and it's stuff that can happen really quickly. But the real, the real, um, I guess, benefit is that we're buying the properties at a really good price. So then it gives us room to resell them at a good price as well.
Yeah, I could definitely see many of those benefits. I mean, obviously, first one is that when you're buying land in order to flip it, day one after purchase, you've basically spent the majority of the money that you're going to spend on the property. Whereas in flipping a house or flipping another piece of real estate where you're doing a bunch of work, you probably have only spent about 40 to 50% of the budget when you purchased it. And then now you have to, as you mentioned, manage contractors, manage time frame. Oops, we found this that we didn't expect, and
Yeah.
some of those things.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a interesting. I'm not going to say that there's not competitors out there. There are competitors, especially when you're in the hot markets, but it's not like anything like the home flippers.
Cool. Well, I'd like to shift to a different piece of land because, even in just reading your bio, I'm very intrigued. So you have a goal to own a private island. Sort of what brought that goal for you? And then do you have areas targeted, and what does that look like for you?
You know what? I don't have anything really specific targeted. I always just thought it would be super cool to own like a Caribbean island. Not an island somewhere, in the continental United States or something. Probably a Caribbean island or something would be cool. And I've looked around online and everything, but maybe one day I'll start sending mail to different island owners somehow and see if they want to put a deal together. But I just thought it would be cool, and I don't know. I don't know if it's ever going to happen. We'll see. Got to talk my
Well,
wife
listen, in the
into it
same way
first.
that you're reaching out and placing offers on land, I mean,
Yeah,
an island owner, everything is for sale, right? For the
that's
right
right.
price.
That's right.
Excellent. So I want to transition over. This is the Healthy Investor Podcast. Wanted to talk to you about some of your healthy habits and routines that contribute to your life and also to your business success. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, well, I am super, super regimented when it comes to my healthy routines. First of all, I love working out. Been working out for many years now, but every morning, my alarm clock rings at 4:50 a.m. and I get up and have a coffee and stuff like that. But we go to the gym at 6 a.m. Um, Formerly, it was CrossFit that I was going to for many years. It's now morphed into kind of like a functional fitness type gym, but a lot of the CrossFit type principles. So we're really, group classes, and it's fun, and there's a little bit of competition aspect to it, but always like continuous improvement, and all the different lifts and
Mhm.
areas that you can improve on basically. So that's kind of the physical side of things. Also, every afternoon, go for a walk with my wife, and we do 3 to 5 miles every single day, even on the weekends. And that, believe it or not, the walking sounds easy, but and it is easier, than some of the high intensity type stuff, but it's probably the best thing for me. May even be better for me than the other stuff. Just that walking every single day, I think it has many, many benefits.
Yeah.
So,
So one
yeah.
of the things I loved about, I did CrossFit for a while, and I liked the community of CrossFit. And I also liked, as you had just referred to, the continuous improvement. I remember we would do a session for about 6 weeks, and we would work on specific things and continue to improve. And then there was almost a test day, and it was like, okay, now we're going to try and reach our personal record, and then okay, next week we start something else. And there was sort of a time frame of gauging where you are, and tracking your improvement, and then also that sense of community. So it was pretty cool. I haven't done CrossFit now for a little over 2 years. I've moved more into pretty cardio intensive. So I do some triathlons and sort of
Mhm.
train for that kind of running, biking, swimming, those sort of things. But I definitely recall a great community, and it was a lot of fun, and the competitions, the sort of internal competitions and all that were definitely pretty cool.
Yeah, I love it. I feed off of it. I just think it's a lot of fun. Makes working out fun. Makes me want to get up and go and you know, just keep going every day. So I have no, I'm always looking forward to it, basically.
Right. And the walking thing, I'm glad you mentioned the walking as a little bit more of a strenuous activity than people think of. When you're walking 3 to 5 miles, that's a pretty good clip. It's probably taking you, I would guess it's probably taking you around the hour mark, maybe even a little bit
Yeah, an
longer,
hour
right?
to an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So an hour to an hour and 40 really is about you know 18 to 20 minutes a mile, something like that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and that's a pretty that's a good movement, and getting
Yeah.
your heart rate, you're getting out in California, you have, by the San Diego area, you have the advantages of all that vitamin D coming down
Yeah.
from the sky, right?
Yeah. Yeah, people always say, "Are you going on vacation?" I'm like, "No, I just am out every day walking." Uh, but yeah, so and that's kind of the fitness side of things, and the nutrition side of things is also a very big part of my life as well. Well, I think it was close to 4 years ago now, I switched over to being vegan. Prior to that, I was vegetarian for quite some time, and that's really kind of helped me, health wise, and I just think ethically, it's a great thing to do as well. So that's really been pretty good for my health and stuff. Like, I haven't eaten desserts in probably 10 years. I'm kind
Mm.
of I'm kind of an all or nothing type of person. When I say something like I'm not gonna eat desserts anymore, like I don't do it anymore. So it's just kind of my way to stay really structured.
Well, good for you for having that discipline. I bet almost every person who just heard you say, I haven't had dessert in 10 years was like, whoa.
I know, because for me, if I start eating desserts, then I'll probably eat too many desserts, and I just, don't even want to go there.
So, switching over to vegan, what do you notice differences in your body, how you feel, how you can perform? What are you seeing as some benefits to that?
Yeah. People, I think, have this assumption that you're going to get weaker, you're going to look sickly, um, and not. It's like complete opposite. I'm actually the strongest I've ever been, and this is me, almost 49 years old. So I just think that as long as you kind of keep an eye on, if you're into like movement and your performance and everything, you probably should keep in touch with what your macros are, at least kind of a general idea, getting a protein and things like that. So I always have like vegan protein shakes and
Mm.
things like that maybe make up for the lack of meat in the diet. But I don't know. I just feel like it's a very clean way of eating. I never feel like weighted down because I ate something crappy. I mean, your food is, what you eat kind of translates into how you feel a lot of times. And I'm always feeling great because of it. And these days there's so many great options. I mean, before it used to be, I'm sure, a lot more difficult to eat in that way. But pretty much going out to any restaurant, there's always options. There's always ways to modify something to make it vegan. It's really not that hard. It's
What's
just
your
kind of like some things are just like you don't even view them as on the menu when you go out. It's just like, okay, these are the things I can eat. I'll pick one of these.
what's your favorite vegan protein or your
Yeah,
go-to?
I mean, I eat like Impossible burgers.
Okay,
So yeah, those are pretty good. They taste like, I mean, I don't know. Maybe some people can tell the difference, but I think they taste like very similar to a real hamburger, especially if you put all the other stuff on
sure.
it.
Once you start
So
throwing the mustard packets on there and all, right?
yeah, yep.
Okay, cool. So I want to transition over to the final segment where I ask the same questions of every guest. So for you, Pete, what is your definition of success?
My definition of success is being able to take care of my family. So I've got a wife and three daughters, 22, 20, and 13 now. And just being able to take care of them, being able to provide for them and also teach them and help guide them in life. That's kind of my definition of success. If I'm able to do all that stuff and be a good role model for them, then I'm happy.
Okay. Question number two, for someone who's new to investing or even learning to focus on their goals and their path to success, do you have a good book recommendation?
Well, I'm sure you've probably had other guests say this book, but it really is true. Like Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. It's a very good foundational type book that kind of describes how you want to, where you want to be. Like you want to be an investor rather than an employee for someone. If you're interested in really going in on the real estate investment world. So it's about taking that transition from an employee to ultimately becoming an investor. So it's a very, very useful book. It may be too basic for some people, but I think it has some great principles in it.
Well, I think it's a timeless classic. It's a
Yeah.
great first book. It's definitely, definitely was one of my first, and it's something that I often refer back to. So great recommendation.
Yeah.
So, again, I would, before we get to the final question, I want to thank you for coming on. I appreciate when you reached out about coming on the show, you sent a video, just a short video. Hi, I'm Pete. Here's what I do. I would love to come on your podcast, and very personal. I appreciate that. And I appreciate that you sort of utilize technology, right, in order to stand out a little bit. So thank you for doing that. How can we support you, and how could people reach out to you if they want to?
Yeah. Well, the best place would be to go to my website, which is turningprofit.com. And on there, I do a monthly income report where I break down everything that's going on in our land flipping business. So I do break down what we took in revenue that month, what we did in gross profit, all the deals that we did that month, what we bought those properties for, what we sold them for, gross profit on those each and every deal, how many days we held them for, and also some notes about each and every one of those properties. So every month, do one of those. It's also associated with our new podcast we launched, which is also called Turning Profit. In the podcast, we talk a lot about land investing, but we also talk about other forms of real estate investing as well, and try to bring on some cool guests. So we just launched that at the beginning of January here. So it's been an exciting adventure. So, but yeah, so on the website there, you'll have all the different ways to contact me and links to our YouTube channel and social media and all that stuff.
All right. So, well, definitely best of luck to you in your new podcast adventure. I know
Thank
for
you.
me, I've been doing this for about 7 or 8 months now, and it's been a lot of fun, and I get to meet some great people like yourself. So, that makes it a pretty cool experience. So final question, if you could think back with me to a younger Pete around ages 10 to 12 years old, knowing what you've learned so far on your journey, what are 3 pieces of advice that you would give to yourself or to any preteen child to help guide them towards success? I'm guessing, having raised a 22, a 20, and a 13-year-old, you probably could put yourself in these shoes pretty easily.
Yeah, just kind of going through that and similarly went through it. I think the world right now, the world is changing really, really rapidly. And I've kind of become of the opinion that even though I've got a college degree, I don't necessarily think it's best for all kids to actually go down that path. It just depends. I mean, obviously, some careers it's a necessity. Some careers or some kids, it's kind of pointless because maybe they want to be an entrepreneur, maybe they want to be an artist, maybe they have something, some other sort of interest, and ultimately, your career is about finding a way to generate money, but also do something that you like. So, um, so the world has changed, and there are many ways to generate money, and they don't all start with having to go to college. So that's a big one. That's a big piece of advice that maybe some parents would hate me for that one, but it's honestly the truth. Um, the other thing that I think is very, very important is to become very regimented in whatever you do. Like setting daily habits is extremely important. And you may have goals and everything like that, but if you don't set the daily habits that will ultimately lead you to those goals, you're not going to hit those goals. So, say for instance, you set a goal that you want to run a 4-minute mile. It's not just going to happen. You've got to go out there and you've got to train in a specific way and do the specific habits in order to make them happen. So that's something that took me way too long to figure out on my own. And then a third piece of advice would be, especially in business and maybe in the workplace, that sometimes emotions can be really counterproductive. So I think it's best to kind of look at the situation, take a deep breath, and even sometimes that emotional reaction is what you want to do, but it's really not the best thing to do in a lot of ways. So it's always better to, in my opinion, this kind of the way that I've always lived, is to kind of just take myself outside of that situation and kind of look at what your ultimate goal is, and then just proceed in that manner and maybe not respond in an emotional way at all.
I love that advice, all 3 of them. I have to touch on one of them real quick and sort of refer back to your second piece of advice about being regimented. I've been thinking about this a bit lately, and similar to you, I wish that was something that I understood when I was younger. I have an 11-year-old daughter. We have these sort of conversations now. And I think the idea of the term discipline was presented to me as a child in a certain way of like, discipline was whether you're being good or bad. And
Yeah.
discipline was what you were doing to keep yourself out of trouble. And it probably created this idea in my head of what discipline was, when the reality is, when we're talking about real life discipline, it's, do you have the discipline to do what you said you were going to do, or to get up on a regular basis and work out, read, meditation, whatever that means in your life. So I love that you spoke about being regimented and sort of figuring that out, because very similar to you, and I mentioned this before we started, we're about the same age, and you know, you actually live not too far from me, relatively
Yeah.
speaking, you know, considering the fact that we're pretty far apart now. But yeah, that was an idea that had never occurred to me or been taught to me at a young age. And it's one of the biggest things that I wish I knew when I was significantly younger. So I
Yeah.
appreciate
Yeah.
that you brought that up.
I mean, that word, in fact, that you were talking about, discipline, you know, it has kind of two meanings in itself. I mean, like, discipline is, you know, one thing, but it also has that negative side of things, like to be disciplined, you know, it's like you got in trouble, you know? So I
Mm-hmm.
think that's kind of like confusing in our own minds in a way. And, you know, it's about building those habits, you know, and that a really good book about that. I know you didn't ask me about it, but that I read is Atomic Habits, and I forget, James Clear is the name of the author. So you might have already read that, but that's an awesome book to having to deal with all that.
I am actually, this week, I have been listening to that on Audible,
Oh yeah,
Atomic
I do the
Habits. I
same.
have the book and I didn't read it. And then I was looking for another Audible. I'm on the road a bit throughout the day. So that is one that I added. I'm about halfway through it. Very, very good book.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Cool. Bonus recommendation. Well,
Yep.
thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it, Pete. For those of you who are listening, make sure you check Pete out at turningprofit.com, and make sure you like and subscribe to his new podcast, the Turning Profit Podcast. Go out there and make it a great day. Thanks so much for joining me on the Healthy Investor Podcast. Check out the show notes for more information about connecting with our guest. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please head on over to iTunes and leave a positive rating and review. It would mean the world to me. I'm grateful for your support, and I wish you an abundance of success on your journey to healthy investments and a healthy life.